everyone. Hi. It's a big pleasure to be here to record another episode of the podcast with our star guest, who is ex-CEO of Pinnacle, Paris. Could you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me. So I'm Paris Smith. I've been in the industry 29 years. I started out literally as a clerk, worked my way up to running a company called WWTS for 11 years. And then I moved to Curacao and ran Pinnacle for 17 years. One thing that has been so interesting throughout that journey is how, through the internet and the evolution of data, AI, it's much more in depth now. But the reality is that sports data has really, really been a critical part of the success of a lot of the companies that exist today.
Thank you, Paris, for a small introduction. And it's really fun that you're 29 years in the industry while I'm only 24 on this earth. Uh,
Thanks.
uh,
Thanks.
yeah, so it's gonna be a brilliant, knowledge that I could gain from you. So, wanted to talk about you since we have a podcast about sports data, right? And wanted to have a general topic in terms of how a role of sports data in betting. So basically, you have a great and huge experience, and it is interesting how the sports data in betting have changed over the course of these years. And what do you think will happen with the sports data in future? What opportunities and etc.
So, I mean, sports data is such a broad perspective, concept, product, everything. When you talk about it from the sports books term and the betters terms, that sports data that has made sports betting so much more sophisticated. If you go back 29 years, people were looking at newspapers, looking at Don Best, subscribing to anything that could give them any edge, if you will. And, that was the sports data. As times progressed and, the internet and technology took off, then people were able to get live data and historical data and
Mm-hmm,
put it into not only from the sportsbook side, from the risk management perspective, but from the sports better side, from the betting perspective. And through that process, it has just become increasingly more competitive, more complicated for sports books to win and
mm-hmm,
for bettors to take their information and actually even get down. Or, what's happened is there's been so much, API betting based on
mm-hmm,
modeling, based off of the sports data, that it's really changed the industry significantly. And I think that is why today you have such an influx of the micro betting and, all the derivatives that
mm-hmm,
weren't as popular before. But, there's certain people that don't have that. They don't have understand the data points. They don't have the data. So they're making more emotional bets and they're offering those in the sports books today.
mm-hmm. So, are you saying there is a gap in data for a micro market, for micro betting for the actual consumers?
No, actually, the micro betting is based off of data, but from the bettor's perspective,
Yeah.
it's easier. It's why they brought another level of betting to the industry. If you had had micro betting on a sports book 25 years ago, nobody
Uh-huh.
would have ever bet it because the margins are so high. A sports bettor
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have any part of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So in total, who is that in better place right now if we are comparing 25 years ago to today? Is it the sports books that they have a lot of data to create those models, or is it the actual bettors that could assume, all of this data
Yeah, that's a
and
really
win?
great question. Yeah, that's a great question because there's data is just becoming more readily available. And more to that, for the sports better side, there's so many products that provide the data that a sports better doesn't have access to or wouldn't know how to get access to. You know, Rhythm Sports is basically takes something like very similar to what Pinnacle would have taken for the modeling,
Mm-hmm.
and it puts in all the data points that you could dream of, and then you're able to put in your recommendations, what you like from a betting perspective, maybe the pace of the game or something like that. And then you can create your bets through that, and it tells you what the EV is. So there's an example where it is going to be, you know, a better opportunity for the better.
Mm-hmm.
But the sports book's always going to have the edge, right? Because they take
Mm-hmm.
the juice, they take the vig.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree on
So it's
you with.
sustainable. It's sustainable. That's what's important.
Okay, yeah, that sounds interesting. And you were saying about company Rhythm. I guess you joined as an advisor there. Is it correct?
Yeah, I am, and I'm also an investor. And the reason is it's because it comes from my DNA. When I realized
Uh-huh.
what they're doing, I was like, wait, that's exactly very, you know, not exactly obviously, but very, very similar to what we did at Pinnacle. And I thought, you know, and even within Pinnacle, like the reason why
Mm-hmm.
they take larger bets and they don't kick people out is because they have respect for the bettors and for the
Mm-hmm.
sports betting in its inception. So you know, there's a lot of products out there that are trying to help people make better decisions based on data that's available.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But could you tell me about more, a little bit more about the Rhythm? Because it's interesting to hear what they do a little bit in detail. Yeah.
It's very much more complicated over my pay scale, but
Uh-huh.
they have been able to create an entire modeling BI data center, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, so everybody wants to be a better, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. And but you have to have information, you have to have the data. In order to get that data, you know, that's the big, you know, where do you go for historical data, where do you go
Mm-hmm.
for, you know, the live data, whatever the information is that you might need. And they've been able to put that all together, and you know, they have a very, very technical team, like for
Mm-hmm.
me, the technical team just blows my mind. And they also have tons of iterations because they're constantly improving their product. They
Mm-hmm.
use the product, they're, you know, they look at what people are making, they make sure that what they say is actually happening. And even, you know, if you're just going to make a bet based on your instinct, and then you
Mm-hmm.
can see if you took, you know, if you take the data points and put in what your passions are for the game, and you can
Mm-hmm.
actually see what your EV is or should be,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're just making a more educated bet. And that's really the
Mm-hmm.
goal, to allow
Mm-hmm.
people to have the best chance to succeed, because the reality is the sports book will always have the edge. So that's
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
little less technical than what you wanted, but as technical as I can get. I love
Okay.
listening to the team.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, it's like angels for regular betters, right?
Yeah. Yep. And
Yeah.
but what, you know, a lot of people give information, and those are great sites as well, but it's not as you know, this is really the next level. And you know, I think their goal moving forward is to be able to clearly define and identify what is the differentiator between themselves and their competitors,
Mm-hmm.
and allow people to understand, you know, if you're just looking for information, that's great. Go to that, you know, whatever website, get the information, pay your subscription fee. But if you're actually really looking for that edge, and you know, being able to be like a syndicate book, for example,
Mm-hmm.
kind of get to the next level, this is the product that you'd want to use.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, and I think I agree with you that it could be a really huge scene, and it will be a huge scene. So really interesting. So the Rhythm is actually a startup, right?
Yeah, but they're startup, and then they're taking off very quickly. That's
Mhm.
the other thing. Like they were, just up and running and they had over 700 people. And at that moment in time, when they said, yeah, we have over 700 actives, I had expected like maybe 120, 150. And that number's just growing consistently, constantly. So I think that
Mhm.
they're really on to something. And
Mhm.
again, they're constantly improving the product. The key is going to to be able to clearly define and show the differentiation between the competitors. A
Mhm.
lot of people are like, oh no, my product competes with Rhythm. And then I ask Rhythm, hey, what do you guys think? And they're like, maybe not 100% competitive,
Uh-huh.
but they have a great product. They're
Uh-huh.
extremely professional.
Yeah, that's the core of all. And transitioning, to a recent startup, it's really interesting for me, I think, and for everyone who is listening to us. How is the data available for startups right now? Like, and and what trends do you see in how startups are leveraging the data, like you just mentioned? Yeah, and to differentiate themselves.
Yeah. Um, you know, the data is a very important point.
Mm-hmm.
It's critical within the development of of a lot of the new products that are being launched. I think that Sport Radar, they have tons of data, obviously, and
Mm-hmm.
they do a good job of sharing it out. They obviously have to be careful that they don't share it with a startup and it's going to a
Mm-hmm.
bigger operator, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
are obvious
Uh-huh.
loopholes that they've been dealing with and controlling. But there's two different concepts of data. There's official data and then there's
Mm-hmm.
data. And, globally, it's not just in the US. Globally, there is so much access to unofficial data that, startups are able to use, especially from a proof of concept perspective. But a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, if you don't have a live product, you don't need the official data with minimal latency, right?
Mm-hmm.
The official data becomes critical when latency is critical to whatever product is being utilized from the data. But I really think that, there's also companies, entrepreneurs that have figured out and cracked the code of receiving really great data and created a product of providing data.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. I'm very passionate about it. I also, I think for me throughout the years, especially coming from inception of the actual industry,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of crazy to think about. Thank you for reminding me how old I am. Um,
No.
but but it's so interesting that like the big data feed back in the
Mm-hmm.
days was Don
Mm-hmm.
Best, and Don
Mm-hmm.
Best data came from all the offshore sports books. So everybody
Mm-hmm.
would give them what their lines are, and that was
Mm-hmm.
the ecosystem, not just for offshore, but also for onshore, whether they admit it or not. I think now they do. But that was back then. Now, everybody realizes data is critical. Where I
Mm-hmm.
think there's probably an error in execution is they've overpriced the data. If you buy data for esports, it's super expensive. And the products haven't transitioned with the cost of data.
Yeah.
So if you go back, Sport Radar, there's a couple other companies. I just can't think of the name of it, but like the main company that BetRadar eventually bought, or Sport Radar, was, they had the people in the stands and they were
Yeah.
getting all the data points.
Mm-hmm.
That was, and they would charge, $75 per match. And we're like,
Mm-hmm.
$75 per match? That's just
Mm-hmm.
insane. Well, then all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden, you have a global sports book and the volumes are actually sustainable to pay that. And then they realized after, like, it was almost an unintentional partnership for the growth, because live betting was, not really a
Mm-hmm.
big thing in the very beginning, obviously. Um, but then there was a point where it made sense. It still
Mm-hmm.
seemed high because it was something new, but then all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden it's like, oh, here's, you have to pay 4 million for data. It's like, you know, what are you talking
Mm-hmm.
about? Oh, and by the way, we'd like commission on that. We'd like a rev share. And it's like, okay, so it has really, as far as I feel, and this is something I've been advocating and kind of complaining about behind the scenes and in front of the scenes for years,
Mm-hmm.
is that whole concept of cost of data is really misconstrued, and it's kind of creating some barriers, but it's also creating a lot of innovation for people to get the information without having to pay those very, very high fees that are not
Uh-huh.
applicable to very many people in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, what the future do you see? Like, first of all, do you see any problems? Like you've mentioned that the monopolies, like big companies, are slowing down the innovations in terms of, let's say, startups or some innovations because they own the market and the data is really expensive. This is the first part, and the second, what future of sports data do you see?
Well, I think from the first part, it's terrible to ask somebody who's my age two questions. Um, but from the first part, I think um, you know the importance of the data
Mm-hmm.
is it's there. It's
Mm-hmm.
extremely important. You have to have it. I just feel like they're going to realize that by having the cost too high, they're going to
Mm-hmm.
get a couple people that are paying
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate price, and then everybody else is taking it from the bottom. The other thing that's going to become interesting is a lot of these companies that have really done a phenomenal job, Bet Genius, Bet Radar, Perform, IMG, they're big data providers. They
Mm-hmm.
put in bids for big data. Grid for esports could be included in that, Odin and Base. But those are middlemen.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to be middlemen way back because people weren't as open to sports betting. So you weren't going to have the NBA give a sports book the feed.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you need that kind of middle tier. And I think eventually, maybe I'm hoping that there's just a more direct approach of how to get data. And if and when the middleman is cut out, that's going to
Mm-hmm.
be a very interesting day. For, I don't think it can ever be completely cut out, especially for all the different sports that are out there. But that concept of needing the middleman, I think with how far gaming has come in the US and globally from a regulated perspective,
Mm-hmm.
different leagues and whatnot, they might be more inclined to go direct with people and make the money themselves. And if they're making the money themselves, they're going to realize, okay, there's a point where it doesn't make sense and nobody wants our data. But if we
Mm-hmm.
make it amicable and something that people can actually afford, then you get to the masses. So you're getting a little bit of everything, not a lot of a couple things.
Okay, yeah, for me it was always interesting why the leagues themselves do not, sell the data right to the sport
Yeah,
books, right?
yeah.
So,
But but the stigma to sports betting was very, very heavy, especially in the US pre PAPSA repeal.
yeah, so it might look like a future, and as well, I've been listening to a podcast, and someone said that they think one day someone will create some kind of open API for everyone, and it will be, most for free. So hopefully,
That is the day I'm waiting for somebody. That would be, it would just be, well, what you would get from that is better product for
hmm
the players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and more startups and growing market, more innovations and etc.
Yeah.
New people. All right. For me, to be honest, I wasn't in the betting space, but when I started to learn, for me it was shocking that there is people on the fields that are basically transferring the data, and it's all done this manually, and there is like providers like Sportradar, and when I learned it, it was kind of a no-brainer for me. Why is it working so hard? All of these processes. So
Wow.
yeah, hopefully it'll change soon. And since you're a great networker, you're the person who is connecting people, and and just you love people from what I read about you and heard. And it's really interesting to hear, like, how does sports affect, like, in terms of people connection? How does it help to connect people? And is the sports data help somehow? Let's say, like, yeah, from your experience.
Right now, something that I'm really hot on from an investment perspective is the social, like having I don't want to say social media, but, having a social network within a media space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's really, and it's driven by data. Forever Network, another company
Mm-hmm.
that I'm very heavily involved with. They're phenomenal. Like when I'm on Facebook, my
Mm-hmm.
friends from Canada, the US, Europe, and Asia repost Forever Basketball posts all the
Mm-hmm.
time. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just so cool that, everybody's looking at their content. So the content data,
Mm-hmm.
that's really creating communities. And
Mm-hmm.
those communities are part of the innovation that's driving acquisition and retention. And everybody wants to be part of something. So I really feel like the companies that are very community focused and utilizing a lot of the data, it's not, now we're going to a different side of data,
Mm-hmm.
not the actual sports betting data,
Yeah.
but that's a very, very critical part. And there's some great companies out there that are doing amazing things, utilizing that data for the betterment and allowing people like a one-stop shop community where they can get all the information so they can make their bets. And all these people are talking to the same people that are utilizing the data to help you make better bets. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's a whole nother portion or kind of vertical of the ecosystem, which is really cool to watch.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So the good data and the sports data, like sports overall, it connects people, and
Yeah.
it's interested how you've linked it to creating, not creating, but the business side also, how it
Yeah.
helps businesses connects, and that's really awesome. And you as a connector, it should be really cool for you to see this.
Yeah. Well, and then you've got, like, from that community perspective, you have products out there. I think WagerWire and there's a Bet Swap as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually either if you don't like your bet, you can bet it out, but also you can
Mm-hmm.
see what other people are betting and ride off of somebody else's bet, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
cool. And you can do that with Rhythm if you like somebody's models or if you see their models top of the leaderboard. Like, there's so much technology that are creating these connections with people, and
Mm-hmm.
you can follow, you can repost. I love it. I love it. And this is really a necessity, and it's inevitable because the next generation, they demand these types of things. They want that connection, they want that online contact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and obviously it's your generation that are coming up with a lot of these great ideas for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Because
But
you know
those
what you
like
want.
yeah, but those like you mentoring us and helping along the way. So it's really important to get
Yeah.
your knowledge as well.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah.
All right.
But
So yeah, yeah. Go
I was
ahead.
just going to say that's actually the most enjoyable part of I'd say the third phase of my career is is helping and listening to people, understanding what they're doing. If I don't understand it, I just say I don't understand it. Normally, I can figure it
Mm-hmm.
out. But just seeing that drive and and I've recently kind of gone back and thought the reason why I'm so passionate about this, working with
Mm-hmm.
the innovators and the entrepreneurs, is because when I started, there was no betting industry, right? Like we set the tone for what is betting today. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so kind of reliving that has been really invigorating for me. I love it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure a lot of, young entrepreneurs, innovators, feel in need of some feel in need of the guidance you are
Yeah.
sharing towards, and this is a really great, scene. And I don't know if I could call it mission for you, but it's a really, yeah, sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, all
Thank you.
right, so I wanted to ask you, to have a couple blitz questions, and to ask you just a quick one. So, first of all, since the podcast is about sports and data, what is your favorite sport?
Basketball.
Basketball. Why
That's
is
because
that?
I played it. I played it. I was a college basketball player.
Oh,
So
really?
that's my, yeah. But I do I love all sports. Like and it's funny because my partner, he is not from America, but he's the biggest sports fan I've ever met in my life. I've
Mm-hmm.
watched more European football. Now I'm like, you know, and he understands every single player, where they used to play, where they came
Uh-huh.
from, what their stats are. And that has made me enjoy a lot of European football as well.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And since you said that you have a partner, a lot of people in the industry look up to you and trying to, you're inspiring a lot of people. I'm really interested, who do you look up to?
You know, um, I look up to people that are really looking to give back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, you know, even when I joined Pinnacle, the people that I worked for, they're extremely you know, they had so many different foundations that they were supporting, from sports to orchestras. Like anybody who wants to make more, to do more, those are the people
Mm-hmm.
that I really admire and respect.
Mm-hmm.
I see like Geo Comply, Anna and David, like they're really doing some great stuff for for the industry. They have
Mm-hmm.
a nice little niche slash monopoly in the U.S. market with
Mm-hmm.
GeoComply. But what I love about that, and people, you know, they respect them so much, but they give back a lot. And you know, not just to the industry. You know, they have a lot of individual passions that they support. You know, just anybody who's doing more. Amy Howe right now with
Mm-hmm.
FanDuel, she's really, you know, she's talking about women's sports, and I think that's just fantastic as a female leader. She's the
Mm-hmm.
perfect spokesperson for that. Obviously, you know, the WNBA, they're doing a lot of speaking for themselves, being so competitive and phenomenal. And you know, there's just this energy of superstars, singers, whatever, supporting the female sports. The, you know, Taylor Swift supporting the NFL, that's helped a
Mm-hmm.
lot, right? It's just like everybody's in that, like you were talking about, sports brings people together. It's
Mm-hmm.
probably one of the biggest things, especially in the US, where people are not political. They are
Mm-hmm.
coming together for sports, through sports, and it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. And what is the favorite part of your job and everything you do?
The favorite part, oh boy, there's so many. Like right now, you know, I've always loved my job. You know,
Uh-huh.
I'd wake up every day and, you know, just go, please let everybody love their job half as much as me, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll all be super productive.
Uh-huh.
Um, but you know, now I'm doing all of the parts of my job that I truly loved. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I love working with Sue Schneider and Kelly Keene.
Mm-hmm.
Silka Wyatt's also working with us, like working with people that are passionate. I love that. People that I admire and adore. and respect. You know, I love that part of it. I love talking to the entrepreneurs. I love watching the success. Like,
Mm-hmm.
people are progressing. They are doing it. They're taking the information and they're, you know, they're pivoting or whatever they need to do to become successful in the space. And I think, you know, one, I was at a G2E a few years ago, and I
Mm-hmm.
happened to be hanging out with a friend that I had at that point. I was in the industry 27
Mm-hmm.
years, and I met him at an industry event 27 years before in Antigua.
Mm-hmm.
And we always get together. He's, you know, he's had a sports book career, a casino. You know, he owns a online casino now that for B2B, and we're there, and then introducing all these brand new kids that have never met each other, and they're
Mm-hmm.
literally your age and younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what, one day, and when we go out, we big ball, like, we best restaurants, we just have the best time because we've made it in
Mm-hmm.
theory. And I'm saying to these guys, one day in 25 years, you guys are going to be here at the conference looking at that next generation, and, you know, be able to go do cooler things, not all share a room in a cheaper hotel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that it's just this generational success, and I love that. I love that. And they're much
Paris,
smarter. They're much smarter than we were, so I have a lot of confidence.
Paris, it's so inspiring. Really, for me, it's so inspiring, and you're boosting, like, for me personality, boosting
Oh,
motivation, and to hear that, like, it's really important, I think, for me and for
oh, thank you.
everyone in my generation. So
Yeah.
I will say you're the angel, okay, for us who helps.
Thank
So.
you.
Yeah, all right. So we about 30 minutes. Don't want to keep this one, but maybe do you want to share something that we haven't covered to say just a couple words about anything?
Um, you know, I think when you were sharing those very kind words,
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I think, you know, people, my peers within the industry, I
Mm-hmm.
think we can all help with is just letting that next generation know that, you know, if they could see themselves the way we see them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, the people that I'm working with, they're, you know, people always say that the younger generation, they don't want to work as hard, you know, anything over a 40-hour work week, no thank you. If I can't have it my way, I don't want to work there. um me, worked my ass off.
Mm-hmm.
I sacrificed. I was a single mom. I mean, I did the most. Did I have a work life balance? Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
But if I wouldn't change it, only because it helped me be who I am today. And it helped me be that much more grateful. And when I'm helping and coaching people, you know, you do need to have the balance. But the reality is, if you really want to achieve, you have to
Mm-hmm.
put in the work. You have to put in the
Mm-hmm.
work and then believe in yourself.
Okay, two main things, right? Be disciplined, working hard, believing, and just keep going, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Paris. So I don't think you need the introduction or advertisement, but where can our listeners find your work and follow you?
Ooh, I'm terrible about that. I'm trying to get better. But I'm on LinkedIn
Uh-huh.
through Defy the Odds, and then, of course, just with Paris Smith. I don't really do a lot. I need to do more and just kind of share my experience, my thoughts, working on that. But yeah, I'm always, you know, and I'm very, very active at the conferences.
Hmm.
But LinkedIn is the best spot to get me, just to leave a note. I'm very, very active there.
Okay, thank you, Paris, for your inspirational speech today and for interesting insight you shared about sports data. And it was great to have you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.